Okay, welcome to Wayne's World Garage. What we have here is the oil pressure gauge from the Minneapolis Moline engine, which runs the Frick Sawmill at Kinder Park Farm. It's a 605 cubic inch, 6-cylinder engine. It's built in 1946, produces maybe 100 horsepower. It's big, it's heavy, it's low compression. It's a long stroke engine, and being long stroke, what that means is it'll have a lot of torque, and we need a lot of torque to cut our logs. A simple pressure gauge is this right here, and all this does is measure pressure. What the people at Minneapolis Moline did is they were a little bit ahead of their time since they didn't have computers in 1946. So they built a piece of cast iron, and inside this cast iron is a small piston, and the piston is spring loaded. Tied to the piston is a little actuator, and the actuator is on the other side. So what happens when the pressure increases, okay, the piston goes out. When the pressure goes to nothing, the spring pulls it back and the actuator shorts out the ground and this little lug right here. And it works pretty cool. So what you have to do when you start it, it's got no oil pressure. So you take this little lever, you push that out. And that makes it so it's not short-circuited. And your magneto now will run. Once it starts running, the piston will push it out, and this is going to drop down some. And once it drops down some, okay, the magneto will continue to run. If for some reason you lose oil pressure, it gets below 5 or 6 psi, okay, the piston will retract and it'll short out the magneto and it'll turn off your engine. So it's a 1946 version of a low pressure switch. It's brilliant. It's simple and it works pretty well. Ours wasn't hooked up, so I just simply took a piece of Delron, it's 1/2 inch diameter, and machined it. And I took some 1032 inch brass rod and threaded that and stuck it in there. And what we'll do now is hook it up to air, because I don't want to get oil over everything. And we'll give a little demonstration and show you how this thing works. Okay, so here we have our little test setup for this Minneapolis Moline pressure gauge. And what we did here is this yellow line is air pressure coming in. I've got maybe 15 psi coming in. And I connected a 12-volt battery to this little light. So right now, we have no oil pressure. This little lever thing here is flipped down. So that means we have a short circuit for our magneto, and it will not run. The engine won't run. So what do you do when you want to start the engine? You got to unshort the magneto. So what you do is you flip this lever out. Notice when I flip that lever out, the light goes out. If I flip the lever down, it shorts the magneto out. So to start the engine, you flip this up. Okay, crank, 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 and we'll show a video of the engine running. And when that does, to simulate the engine running, we'll give it air pressure. Now notice as soon as I gave air pressure, what happened? The piston pushed out, and when the piston pushed out, this little lever fell down. How cool is that? Now notice that the oil pressure is 15 psi, which is pretty about what we normally run, 15, 20 psi. Low compression, low RPM, it turns at 1,000 or 1,200 RPM. It doesn't have 45 psi. It was never designed to have 45 psi. So now let's pretend we have an issue and our oil pressure starts dropping. If you look at this really carefully, notice this little piston is moving in and moving in and moving in. Up. When it gets below 5 psi, it shorts the magneto out, turning the engine off. It's brilliant. Again, we'll do the same thing again. We have no oil pressure. Of course you have no oil pressure when the engine's not running. So we need to start the engine. So to start it, we need to unshort the magneto. So what you do is you flip this little lever out. Now the magneto is not shorted. Once you start cranking, I won't do that, we have oil pressure. When the oil pressure comes up, okay, this little thing here flips on down. When it flips down, okay, it allows this piston to move back and forth. So now we're happy, the engine's running because our magneto is not shorted out. All of a sudden, somebody forgot to put oil in it. The oil all leaked out. We're losing pressure quickly. So as we lose pressure quickly, once it gets a little bit, low, below 5 psi, it shorts the magneto out and turns the engine off. 1946 technology, it's brilliant. They were probably doing it before 1946. There's no computers, no information, no email needed, no IP address needed, no internet needed. It's brilliant and it works and it is simple. Thanks for watching this. Next video we're going to show is with this thing hooked up to the engine and give a demonstration of that.